Hey guys, I hope you are doing well and taking all the precautions necessary in these times. And of course, I'm Siddhant, your host for today. On today's panel discussion on digital marketing during economic pause and beyond, trends, tips, and best practices, which is very much needed in these times where conventional marketing thoughts have been tossed out of the window, and we need something radical, affordable, and yet practical. But before we go forward, I'd like to mention that this event is brought to you by Designhill, world's largest creative marketplace, where we are catering to the design needs of businesses of all sizes through a design community which is 180,000 strong and is spread throughout the world. So coming back to the event, we have some amazing speakers with us, and it's an honor to introduce you all to our audiences, starting with Alan. So Alan C handles marketing for eco engineering and has a rare ability to speak on social media marketing and sales 101 in the same sentence. He is recognized as one of the 50 most influential chief marketing officers on social media by Forbes, as well as Marketer of the Year for both content marketing and social media by the American Marketing Association. So, welcome, Alan. It's good to have you here.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
Yeah. And then we have Carlos Gil, CEO and founder of Gil Media Pro, and a full service marketing agency renowned for implementing digital and social media strategies to help clients make relevant connections. Based in LA, Gil Media Co works with the Fortune 500 clients by assisting them to embrace disruption and succeed in their digital market transformation. So, hey, Carlos, it's
How's
good to
it
have you here
going?
as well, man.
It's great to be here.
Of course, and we have Garrett here as well. So Garrett is the co-founder and the CEO of Directive, a next-gen performance marketing agency for software brands headquartered in Austin, Texas. Since its establishment in 2K14, Mehrguth had led Directive in its expansion of 5 new locations, starting from Orange County to LA, to San Francisco, to NYC, Austin, and London. So Garrett is truly a global business leader. Garrett, we welcome you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have the person with the hairstyle to look out for, Michael Barber, uh, award-winning creative and marketing leader with over 15 years of experience in developing strategies and architecting impactful work for consumer and business brands. Builder and leader of world-class marketing and agency teams with experience in both startup and scale growth stages. Proven experience steering mid-market to enterprise-size website and digital experiences from requirements to go live, along with overseeing the strategy and performance of creative across both digital and traditional platforms. Experienced keynote and conference speaker, aficionado of cold brew ice cream and Sour Patch Kids, a fan of Arizona Wildcats, Westies, and travel. And Michael, that was one of the heaviest iterations I've ever done in my life. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And then is Neil Sheffer, a recognized leader in helping businesses maximizing social as a global keynote speaker, university educator, and a social media agency owner, an author and a social media strategy consultant. From Fortune 50 enterprises to Grammy Award-winning musicians, Neil has helped brands reach their next level in social media marketing, and he is available to bring his wealth of knowledge and experience to both educate and entertain your audience at the next event. So once again, Neil, thank you so much to be here.
Thank you.
And guys, I have been doing these webinars for quite a long point of time, and I have never seen a panel who is this loaded in their experience and qualifications. This is the longest bio that I've ever done in my life, and I'm a digital marketer. And trust me, your qualifications are giving me a run for my money. I'm
Yeah.
feeling really bad about myself. So I really hope that I will learn a few things of a thing or two, of course, along with our fellow audience as well. So guys, let us start with the event. So I will just toss the first question to Alan over here. So Alan, right now we have seen digital marketing teams are reporting adjustments and reallocating budgets across marketing channels. How should marketing teams respond to change, and where to move budget to stay effective in such a volatile time? Because we have a trade-off between conversions, awareness, and advertising. So how to allocate budgets in these times?
Right. So keep in mind that my space is primarily has always been business to business. And, in the business to business space, especially here in the US, there's still a lot of companies whose marketing strategy involved trade shows and conferences. Well, all of a sudden, trade shows and conferences, at least face to face, are out the door. So for those conferences, for those trade shows that had in the past been able to leverage some online conferences and such, great. They've kept going forward. But for many of the SMBs, small, medium businesses, they packed up a tent and went to the place for the conference, and they were used to getting their leads face to face. And so that's a huge change for organizations that had not been prepared for the digital world. And so it's not just a shifting of budgets. In some cases, the budgets, it was a blessing that the conference was closed because the business is now actually experiencing less revenue. So they were going to have to cut anyway. But for those whose business had kept going, it's more now moved into education and training. We can't let this happen again. We need to be able to come up to speed so that we're digitally savvy.
Michael, what do you want to say about that? Because you have been dealing with clients span world.
So I think the challenge that every client is facing right now and has been for the last few months is understanding what's working and what isn't in the context of where we find ourselves. And regardless if you're on the B2B or B2C side, I think the one thing we can do as marketers is step into the shoes of the human beings we are marketing to understand what is the context that they find themselves in. Are they at home or are they not? We are living in a society that is incredibly fragmented as it stands. Just if you look here in the US, you have some states that are open and some states that are not, right? So the context for our audience is going to be very different on a locale by locale basis, which means we have more than ever different messaging that we have to do depending upon where those individuals are. We have to understand the context that they find themselves in. And then the thing we have to understand as marketers is what's working and what isn't. And when we can find those tactics that are working, shift our budgets into those areas. And for those that are not paying dividends right now, is pull them back quickly, because we have to be nimble in that ability to shift budget to the right places on tactics that are working and those that aren't.
So what I can infer from that is you are focusing on building a very accurate set of buyer personas, and of course using high tempo testing to figure out what's working and what not, then allocating the budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Garrett, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so I mean, we work mostly with mid-market enterprise organizations. Nobody's that fluid with budget, unfortunately, right? So a lot of people are still, I think, understanding and defining where they want to allocate their capital. I think the biggest hurdle for most people right now is the stuff Michael's talking about and the stuff we all know we need to do. They actually aren't empowered to do. Like, most marketers, frankly, don't have a capital allocation evaluation method. In other words, like, what is the LTV CAC or what is the ROAS on a channel by channel basis, whether it's B2B or B2C, whether it's lead gen or e-com. Most organizations, what I found is that their CRMs, their data systems break between at the channel level. So most people have aggregated data. So let's say they have close rate across a product or a business unit, but not close rate across a business unit and its channel. And so when it comes to like capital allocation and it comes to stuff that he's talking about, they struggle because they don't actually, in their heart of hearts, know or feel confident in their data that a channel is truly working or not, and then they don't have time decay. So in other words, what they don't know is like how long it's going to actually take them to close and what the unit economics are on a channel by channel level. And that's something, you know, I always advocate for, and I have a lot of models around, is how you get financial, sales, and channel data for a product or a business unit all in one sheet. So then you can do that analysis. Then it takes into account weighted costs, right? Team cost, software cost, ad spend, all the different pieces of it. And when you put that all together, now you have a financial model and you can do the stuff everyone's talking about. I think step one is getting that. So when things like this come up, you can be nimble and accurate. And the lack of accuracy, I mean, across the biggest clients in the world is really astounding. There really isn't a lot of data systems for financial and sales analysis at a channel level in most organizations, unfortunately, still today.
Yeah, Garrett, very valid point. And Neil, you have been dealing with a pretty big name in the industry from quite a few years. So how do you think, is there any learning which we can derive from them in terms of evaluating our finances and putting into perspective the marketing ROI? How do they evaluate stuff, and how can small startups take the same? Yeah.
Yeah, there's already been a lot of great things said. I think just to add, I look at it from two sides. From internal marketing, obviously, with the pandemic, we have to be digital first if we want to reach our audience. And I don't know, obviously, there's aggressive startups and what have you that always had the mentality, but most especially larger organizations with a longer history, have a lot of non-digital legacy. And I don't know if they truly have that digital first mindset that I think they're going to need. And I think even when the pandemic goes away, obviously, whether we're businesses or consumers, our content consumption, everything we do is changing, and it will change. And I think that's the first thing, is that companies really need to make sure they're investing in that and meeting customers where they are. So on the other side, I think it's also just more directly understanding. And I think Garrett said it well, put yourself in the shoes of your customers and being able to directly communicate and being able to directly serve them. There's a quote that I like to share in recent presentations. It's actually from an executive at Walmart that says, businesses exist to serve society. So this is really a time not to be quiet, but to really understand your end customer, have communication, understand how you can serve them, even if it means including other products or other services that you didn't normally have. You see restaurants that now have these family boxes, and they're giving away masks and toilet paper to do just that. So for companies that never had a direct access to their end customer, one of my clients is actually, we were talking about haircuts, a hair color company. They primarily sell through Amazon, Walmart, what have you. And without having their direct e-commerce store and their direct email communication, they would have been lost when stores and warehouses were closed for a few weeks. Fortunately, they had that infrastructure, and they understand, and they're able to educate their audience and able to serve them. So I'd really focus on those two ends, and hopefully that's good advice for everybody.
Of course. And Carlos, have you facing any difficulty in making clients embrace the digital first approach? Because if you even see some previous business giants, they are still very skeptical in going digital right now. So are you taking any problem in convincing them?
First, I want to just say that to build upon what the panel's already stated, it's all about working smarter, not harder, in this new normal that we're in. The lane that I stay in is primarily social media marketing. And before COVID happened, brands were already short-staffed in most cases. They were struggling with what to say. They were struggling to keep the noise that's happening on a minute-by-minute basis on social media. COVID happened in March. Companies started laying off. They started furloughing members of their marketing team, making it even more challenging. I think, you have not just COVID, but you also have, the Black Lives Matter movement. You have so much conversation that's happening that has nothing to do with marketing or sales. And I think what companies really need to do is, first and foremost, analyze, how do we want to be viewed by consumers out there? And I think it might have been Michael that said it before, but you really need to put yourself in the shoes of your consumer. Your consumer today probably doesn't want to be hit over the head every single time they see your logo show up in their newsfeed with an ad. If you're struggling with keeping up with the volume, maybe you think about outsourcing. In some cases, companies are running a 1 and 2 person team on their social media team, where previously they had 5, 6, 7 community managers. So you can outsource in this era, and that's okay. I think that taking the approach of being more conversational and less promotional is really the strategy I would recommend for brands to take, as opposed to just constantly selling, whether you're B2B or B2C. And if you are in B2B, just realize that the prospecting cycle, the buyer's cycle, the buyer's journey, it's going to take longer than what it did before. So you really lose nothing by at least staying in touch with your customers. And again, don't lose sight also of the relevance of Facebook ads and online advertising in these times, at least to stay top of mind without directly having to tweet that you have a sale or an offer, constantly be posting on social media.
Of course, and building on the same line, so there was a research by Forrester which said that it may happen that that marketers need to adjust their digital marketing goals and KPIs. Specifically, that lower funnel purchases and conversions might be temporarily depressed, while more opportunity might exist around brand awareness and affinity building with the increased online activity. So, how should marketers adjust what they are measuring and what can they expect in terms of results? So what are some ways to stay flexible and take advantage of the opportunities right now? So I'll start I will really suggest to Carlos to start with the same question, so we can delve deeper in that.
Yeah, I think oftentimes as marketers, we just look at our KPIs and we think of, in some cases, just sales or website clicks. And we really lose sight of the focus that having just conversations is a form of marketing to your customer, but we call it relationship building, right? You build a relationship by really having dialogue. And I think we need to have more of that in these times. I often say, just through my own content on social media, or when I do keynotes, do a good job listening to what's being said by those that follow you, those that buy from your brand. See what they're actually talking about and jump into those conversations. I think, again, right now we have to really level set and realize that unemployment is really high in the United States, right? You have consumers that are sitting on the sidelines, hanging on to as much cash as they can. Those that are working aren't even certain if the job that they have, they're going to be keeping for the rest of this year. There's so much uncertainty happening that just taking the approach of checking in on your customers, asking how they're doing, creating more conversation on your own channels, even leveraging maybe email marketing, which I know, Michael knows a whole heck of a lot about, to not sell, but necessarily just check in and let your customers know what's happening in the background is important. I'll just give you this quick example before turning it back over to the panel. I'm a big fan of Marriott hotels and also American Airlines. I'm really loyal to these brands. And what I like in these times is that when I go on social media or when I get an email from these brands, they're just giving me updates. They're not really trying to close me. They're not right hooking me on any promotions that they have. They're just giving me updates to make me as a customer feel more safe and secure when I do business with them once again.
So as Carlos said, to get more insights to build conversation, we should move to Michael. So Michael, I'll come straightly towards you. So if you can give us some hacks to how to build, conversations with our customers, how to have that warmth as a brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Carlos is getting at is kind of where consumers find themselves right now, which is a severe lack of human connection, except for those people that they are living with, right? This idea of intimacy and emotional connection is something we can do through digital very, very well and build those as brands. And, Carlos touching on it, I mean, there are companies that specific verticals that have been entirely disrupted. Travel is one of them, as he's mentioned. You saw United Airlines yesterday post a drop in profits of 99.9% quarter over quarter, right? So, but they still have to message. Eventually, these customers are going to come back. And so what they're doing is trying to build those connections with customers through emotional messaging, through simply giving them updates, not coming them with sales messages. Just on a granular level, this idea of moving away from more short-term conversion tactics to more long-term brand building. Just take one tactic like retargeting or remarketing. You, again, as Carlos has mentioned, you have a huge unemployment rate right now, not just here in this country, but in other countries too, in the US, I should say. Think about what you could be doing from a retargeting, remarketing perspective. You could be extending those timeframes to, in Google, it allows you all the way through, I think, 500 plus days. So if you're building brand connections with customers, maybe just on a tactic by tactic level, think about how do you shift that conversation so when unemployment comes back up, when spending comes back up, right, you have the ability to shift those messages and those ads and those remarketing efforts away from brand building and more to those conversion metrics.
So of course, I will take a couple of keywords from that, starting from brand building to retargeting to Google AdWords strategy, and I will directly go to Garrett. He's a performance marketing guy. So I would like to ask him how can he leverage brand awareness exercises into conversions post this normal subsides. So is it a good strategy to build upon a nice conversion matrix?
So like how we can, I'm sorry, sometimes I get a little confused on the question. So it's to how we can build conversations in the future, like how we can prepare for tomorrow.
Because when I talk to performance marketing guys, they are primarily focused on sales. Because I have had my stint as a conversion optimization guys, and we were already about sales only. So in these part of times, it is advised to us even to focus on conversions. So is there any way we can leverage conversations for conversions later on? What do you think about those?
Yeah. I don't do a ton in B2C. So a lot of the stuff Carlos and Michael are talking about is really special, and it is relevant. It is accurate, especially when you have this mass marketing, right? And you have the common consumer. I do mostly B2B, and then some B2C stuff, but it's more sporadic or really enterprise and still lead gen related more so than a lot of this other stuff. And what I found on the performance side right now is if we're going to do the retargeting, we should have something to say. And I think that goes into what everyone else is communicating in the sense that if you're going to, well, let's just say what we currently do, regardless of global pandemic, what people traditionally do, right? We run retargeting that says anyone who goes to a page, maybe we have a couple audiences, maybe we have some exclusions. Then we traditionally just send them back to the same page they didn't like. Like if you actually think about how most people do retargeting is people just retarget people back to the same homepage that 90% of their users bounce from. Like that's genuinely what most people do. And I think if we can get away from that and what I like to call value driven, and so like in 2020, the traditional retargeting is still like, even when they go to the next level, they don't go to the right level. So the next level is the 7 deadly sins of ERP software. And or it's the here's why Gartner rated us #1, right? This is very traditional, like info lead gen retargeting. I think if we can go past the traditional gated lead gen to community lead gen, where it can go from one directional communication, where here's what the brand is saying to its customer, instead of here's how the brand is communicating with its customer, is really, really special. Like for us, we built our own free SaaS marketing community. And I've never been a huge community guy. It's not the strength of myself as a leader and all that stuff. But we built this community and it worked. Like genuinely, we have all day, every day. People are talking, they're asking questions, and we're able to help them free of charge. And it is 10xing the performance I ever imagined from like a stupid white paper ebook in 2020. So to answer your question around retargeting and conversations, I think the most important thing here is how do you get to the point where you're more worried about the consumer having value than you getting value. In other words, where what you're giving them is more valuable than what they're giving you. Because most of us just collect their email and that's more valuable than the thing we give them. And if we switch that paradox and we make it community focused and bidirectional and emotional in that sense, that's when I think we get a lot more success out of retargeting, out of top of funnel advertising, out of these things when we actually interact with our customers.
Garrett, you use the word community, and whenever I hear the word community, I immediately pull social media into perspective. Because in my career as a community specialist, social media has been a great tool. So I'll straight away move to our social media experts, Neil and Alan, that how should you leverage the power of community in social media? But if I don't have one, can I build one? If yes, then how? And if you can throw in a couple of case studies or some examples as well, it will be a good addition to. And sorry for a pretty long question.
Okay, let me see if I can dissect it a little bit. So, I mean, certainly, if you were to look at my background, you would see Teradata, big data, SaaS, business intelligence, and CRM. In the most recent time, I've kind of flipped from the perspective that, especially in the B2B space, we do business with people we know, like, and trust. If I don't know you, like you, or trust you, then there's really no amount of information or content that you're going to send me that's going to make me flip that switch. The other perspective now to look at is now I've also started working for a lot of, working in the SMB space, smaller brands. And I'm going to tell you that it's not unusual that if you were to take the social capital of all the employees and add it up and then compare it to the brand, there's more social capital within the employees than the brand. I have almost 90,000 Twitter followers. I working with brands that have less than 100 Twitter followers. So it doesn't tell you, it tells you pretty much if who sends a tweet, what's going to be the viewing of that. And so now it becomes an education and training and employee engagement model in building that community and building that trust. And that's where, right now we've got 6 people on this and everybody looks very comfortable in front of a camera, doing videos, being online. And I can't tell you the number of executives I work with when I say, we want to do an intro video and get you out there on YouTube and stuff like that. And they look like deer in the headlights. LinkedIn came out in 2002. I was the 74,000th person to join that platform. One of the first 100,000 people. I was on Twitter in 2006, shortly after it was released at South by Southwest. There are still a lot of people, and I'm not just talking about boomers, that aren't trained and aren't up to speed on how this channel can actually help develop the trust, how you can get to know, like, and trust me. And so this is really, really important in getting to that community standpoint. Is you need to get your employees on board with it first, and then leverage their social capital, and then you're bringing in your customers, whether that's B2B or B2C.
And Neil, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, that was great, Alan. I mean, obviously with B2B organizations, you definitely have that opportunity to build communities starting from your employees. But it's funny, in Japan, where I do a lot of business, they actually have a term that's sort of a buzzword in B2B and also B2C marketing, which is called community marketing. And community marketing is basically brand advocacy. It's basically leveraging your customers and your fans to do the talking for you. And I'm a really, really big fan of that. And when you include your employees, your partners in it, you begin to create something which I call influencer marketing, because it's leveraging other social media users, not just Instagrammers and TikTokers, but really letting the people around you that have the most brand affinity, that already know and like and trust your brand, let them do the talking for you. Celebrate them. Obviously, brands have always tried to humanize what they do, but there's nothing more humanizing than an actual human that is relatable, that talks on behalf of you. So obviously, without a digital footprint, you can't build communities. So you need to have a digital footprint. And I just wanted to comment earlier on, we were talking about sort of the ROI and spend and all this. I think up until most businesses, although I know of some, they do ask the ROI what their website is. Most understand that you need a website as part of your infrastructure. But with a digital first mentality, you need to meet customers where they're at, and it's search social email. So the email marketing automation, the social media marketing, more and more, I believe that becomes part of that infrastructure that you need, because it's all going digital. Even after the pandemic, like I said, I do believe it's going to be primarily digital. So these are things that you have to have today. Now, above and beyond that, the ad spend, the performance marketing, obviously, you're going to measure those things differently. But it's really time to understand that to build that infrastructure. And as part of that infrastructure, as Alan said, really to activate all of those around you, because it's obviously going to reap benefits for your company.
So Neil, I'm a huge community enthusiast. Do you mind sharing a few incidents or examples of a couple of brands or so who are having a very, a nicely advocating community around them?
Well, I think that obviously there are ways of doing community. You can have your own community on your own website. You can do it through social media groups like Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups. I think what I've seen, especially in the B2B space, obviously are virtual events, pretty much like what we're doing today, of saying, hey, we're here offering, not selling, but really customer education and customer engagement, and bringing people, being together with people literally in real time, and providing them valuable content. We've seen, surely if you've been on Facebook, you've seen just the explosion in terms of live streams of people and businesses just trying to keep in touch. And I think that's, for companies beginning, that's really a great way to start. Obviously, what do you do with your community after you do that is another story. I tend to, because I wrote a book on influencer marketing, tend to see companies that are building these sorts of brand ambassador programs and really tapping into those over time, activating for various campaigns, what have you. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it, but it really begins with, do you have that community, and are you talking to them, and what are their needs? And really going from there, let the community decide where you take it.
Yeah, if I could just hop in here and give a couple examples of some brands that I think have done community well over the last few months and before on the consumer and the business side. There is a Boston-based brand called Tracksmith, just a high-end running brand that I think is doing a great job from a community building perspective. How they're activating their advocates in their community, both offline and online through this pandemic, I think has been really, really interesting to see. I also would say another brand that I think has done really well on the entire opposite end of the spectrum in terms of size and industry is Adobe. Carlos and I are part of a group at Adobe, their Adobe Influencers group, and they have done a superb job, I think, for a large organization to activate both small communities and large communities across not only influencers and advocates, but also within their customer base. And they do it so well, considering how big of an organization they are. So I would encourage people that are watching to take a look at those two brands that are on very different ends of the spectrum to see what they're doing to activate their communities right now.
Oh, wow, that's something I will surely check those out. And guys, session is going really well. But what say if we take a little break and we'll come back after a short break. We will have a short we'll have a short AVA. Okay. So guys, I'll see you. We will see each other in a couple of minutes. Until then, stay tuned, guys, and feel free to put your questions in the questions tab so we can take them up after the panel discussion is over. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks.
Climax is a full-service video agency based around video production. We created a brand that fit our identity at the time, but as we've evolved as a company, we found that that original brand didn't quite fit our aspirations anymore. Finding a partner to rebrand your entire company takes a lot of time and effort. Finding Designhill was an incredible lifeline. Designhill offers a money-back guarantee. If we don't like any of the designs, we get all of our money back. The stuff that we ended up with were well beyond what we had been seeing on other creative services platforms. After creating a simple design brief by answering some questions created by Designhill, we posted, and within a few days, we had over 250 entries. Designhill's platform made it easy to communicate with all of the potential designers. Eventually, we picked a winner. In addition to a logo, our designer also created a letterhead, business cards, and banners for all of our social media platforms. With Designhill's help, we now have a brand that meets our aspirations. We're ready for the future and everything that it's here to bring.
I've always been creative and always been an artist. As a young girl, I used to paint rocks and I used to sell them for a quarter on the street. And I just fell in love with it. It just grew into a passion of mine. I started looking on the web and I came across Designhill, and they had a design contest to design a logo, and I entered it and I won. And I was like, oh, this is really great. I can pick and choose what type of logos or design projects I want to work on. And it allows me to be creative, keep my hands, with my tools and working. So it's kind of nice. It's really easy to use. You can scroll through the projects and there's sections that you could go by. It's really easy. There's a few clients who have come back to use the one-on-one projects. There's one client in particular, she owns a vintage shop, and I designed her logo, and she came back. She needed a design for a flyer, and she really liked the illustrations that I did for her, so she came back a couple of times with projects. I would recommend it, especially if you're a designer that's starting out and you want to learn from other designers, seasoned designers. It's a place to keep in the game and keep using your tools. It makes me feel great, and it kind of confirms that I should be doing this. And I love to see logos that I've designed out, and proud of that. And I think that the clients are so happy that their logo represents what they do and makes them look good. It's a collaboration. It's good for me, and it's definitely good for them.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Yeah, of course. Let's wait for all other speakers as well. We are waiting for Carlos and Alan. So I hope they'll join us soon, and we will take the event forward right now. And the guys, this event is going on amazing. And even I'm learning a lot of things right now. So thank you so much for that. For example, looking more long term, many companies are missing certain immediate goals in the wake of all the news and changes in consumer behavior. So what can they do to set themselves up for a success once class is over? How are there any long term strategies that they should be investing in right now? Because there is a trade off going on between short term profits, long term awareness goals. So what shall long term strategy look like?
So I think you've heard many of us touch on a couple things that I think brands can be focused on for the long term. Garrett touched on this as, we're like 20 years into this digital transformation of organizations, and we are still not set up as organizations to do that well. We have a moment, especially organizations that are quiet right now, to truly utilize this time to transition our organizations to meet this need of where their consumer is. I would encourage us to use the downtime, if you have it, to ensure that you're working towards those longer term goals, because they get shortchanged so quickly as we have to think about every new messaging opportunity that's coming, everything that's changing within the news headlines, everything that's changing contextually for our consumers, for our customers. I think the other thing you've heard from a lot of us is understand that marketing is way more than just the act of marketing itself, right? Building preference and advocacy and long-term customers. It's all the 4 Ps, right? It's not just promotion, it's product, it's place, it's price. I think we must, as marketers, start to play a role across our organizations from the top level with our executive teams within the culture of our organizations, or in order to build internal advocates that can help us build community. And focus on way more than just our advertising and promotional messages, but how are we pricing things given the context that our customers find ourselves in? Place, right? Are there different places we can be putting our products today and build channels that we didn't have yesterday? Product, what are the things that we can change now that we've seen the entire supply chain disrupted over the past 4 months to fixed product issues, right? So all of these things are places that we can play long-term gains in that have nothing to do with the promotional aspects of our companies. And I would encourage us all, given we've got the time to do so, in at least in some of our contexts to do so, is focus on understanding the nuances of how that can impact your promotional efforts, all of those additional items.
Yeah, of course. Carlos, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I would say just, a quick bit to add to that is, when you think of immediate goals, your immediate goals might not necessarily be measured in dollars and cents, but look at your internal processes by which you communicate. And even so, when you start thinking about things like employee advocacy, now's a really good time to focus on building your employee advocacy strategy, which includes maybe sourcing a vendor or two that's going to help streamline communications between you and your employees, and then your employees out to their networks. I'd also say now's a really good time to really think about how you can help, to Alan's point before, your executives get up to par with using social media, because Lord knows when you see a CEO tweeting, from a company branded account, it's not the CEO that's tweeting, it's the communications team or it's the PR team that's tweeting on their behalf. And I think consumers in general have never been stupid, but consumers today are much more aware that there's someone behind the scenes that's kind of playing puppeteer and controlling all these different mediums. And I think that this is a time that you have to really peel back the curtain, and you need to empower your executives to take their phone, show what their morning looks like, have them do Instagram stories, have them do an impromptu Instagram live or Twitter live. But first and foremost, you need to train your executives, going back to Alan's earlier point, on how to do this so that it comes natural to them and it's not forced. And again, look at the next 6 months as really just an opportunity, if you will, to ramp up to a really solid 2021.
Just to add on to what Carlos said, I think if the executive you're speaking to ever says, I don't have time to do that, I don't know how to do that, right? You can point him towards some of the best executives that are doing social well. And there's plenty of examples. I constantly go back to the CEO of Walmart, who does a superb job of talking about what his employees are doing right now on Instagram. That's the channel he plays in. He's very good at it. Who cares if it's the PR? He's got a comms person that's helping him with it, but he does it so well. And if he can do it well, a multi-billion-dollar organization with tens of thousands of employees, then I think any executive can do social well.
To expand on that, Michael, I just wanted to add, I'm so glad that you mentioned Walmart, because I actually enjoy going on Instagram and looking up, there's a couple hashtags. There's hashtags employees of Walmart. There's hashtag Walmart employees. And these threads already have thousands of photos, user generated and curated by employees throughout the years. Now, some of them are, a little suspect, right? That you probably wouldn't want the HR team to be showing to an executive when talking about employee advocacy. But that's the beauty of social media today. It has no filter. And I'm a big fan of providing tools, but not rules. And what I mean by that state is you give your employees the access and the tools to be successful, but you don't police them on how to use these channels, because at the end of the day, they're going to use these channels however they want to use them.
Building on the Carlos point, a couple of times in my consulting days, I have seen executives having a real hard time accepting the fact that they should be on social media. they still don't see the importance of being on social media and being a person themselves. They think they don't have time for that. The bandwidth is too low, and of course, the PR team can handle it. So, just to make transition smoother, I would like to direct the same question to Alan, the 74,000th member of LinkedIn, one of the premier channels right now. So, Alan, how do you convince the top executives to be on social media and portray themselves as a human, not just as a mouthpiece of a corporation?
As Carlos, as Neil, as far as influencer marketing, getting employees involved, and HR has been mentioned, and so this does taking some meetings with HR to help them be able to feel what it is you're really saying to them. Now, I like to be able to tell the employees and my coworkers and everything, you know what, if we all get to stay here forever and we're achieving our personal goals and everything, and there's no layoffs or mergers or acquisitions, yippee. I mean, great. Not too many people get a 30-year and a gold watch anymore, but if that's what we get, fantastic. But the fact of the matter is, the average life of a CMO is less than 3 years for whatever reason. And most employees move somewhere else. And so part of my internal selling message, which is combined to HR, is that this is about personal brand building. Yes, your tweet might very well help us get into a customer or promote a certain product line or whatever, but you're building your own brand. And guess what? You get to take your brand with you no matter where you go. So you're very crisply articulating what's in it for them, with them. Everybody's tuned into that radio station. What's in it for me? And so these influencers, particularly the internal influencers, once they start understanding, okay, yeah, this is helping the company, but you know what? It's also helping my profile on LinkedIn. It's helping my profile on Twitter, on Instagram. I get to take that brand with me. Then the buy-in starts happening a little bit more quickly.
Of course, and does this personal brand building help in conversion results, especially in the B2B segment? So Garrett, I would love if to hear your views on that, because I've seen in B2B market the relationship building and personal brand carries a lot of weightage. So how do you think a top corporate executive on a social media platform can actually help in conversions?
No, I mean, yeah, I love what Michael's saying, Carlos, everybody. I mean, if you guys ever try to work with an executive who doesn't do social, you're not going to get an executive who doesn't do social to do social. So I love the fact that you guys want to. I love the heart of it all. It ain't going to happen. If an exec doesn't do social, they don't do social. Unless you guys have some magic recipe I don't know about. I've never seen it happen. Like, I struggle with it, and I don't even hate it. I still struggle with it. And so my company and my team is actually really active. I have a lot of individuals who are really active on social, and it helps us. I think it helps build the community, builds the brand awareness. But they want to do it for their own selfish reasons, which is perfect. I think a lot of CEOs don't. It's hard for them. I think it's a lot harder than people give credit. They see their team members on side projects. They see their other, and then they know the team member dropped the ball on something, and it immediately changes the culture, right? Because they say something, and then it shuts down this idea of you can be something different than what you are. And so I think that's still a struggle for a lot of execs, is to embrace the fact that you don't control your employees and they can do whatever the hell they want. And I think that's still hard for people. I mean, you'll see it in today. It's the reason nobody was remote, even though they could have got better talent throughout the whole country, right? But you take the whole social, that whole side out of it. I think what's going on right now at the end of the day is everyone's doing what they're supposed to, and nobody's doing anything that anyone cares about. So here's what I mean by that. Everybody's doing blog posts because that's what you do. Everybody's doing a podcast because that's what you do. Yet if you ask them, why would someone listen to your podcast over the 2 trillion others, they go, well, I'm going to get good guests, but it's never that they have some creative segment. So I think the irony is we all got better at digital and got worse at marketing. And in other words, like, we got worse at making anyone care about what the hell we were saying. And so, like, I'm going to give the audience some examples of what I'm trying to do to get away from it all. So one of them was like sour interviews, right? We're shipping people that we want to interview that share an audience with us, right? Like, I want to go after B2B SaaS marketers, right? So I'm finding all the people out there that have a similar audience, right? Because content today needs promotion built in. So if you get good at financial modeling, you can't pay for top of funnel traffic because there's no ROI in it. No matter how long you want to forecast that out with your CFO, the time decay of getting top of funnel to a strong average order value is like impossible, right? So you have to build content with promotion. So we're doing things like sour interviews. We're doing our own marketing competition show, like ideas that actually have, like you'd actually want to watch. I think the barrier for all content is would I actually read this? Like I can tell you 90% of the crap I've written, I wouldn't even want to read. And that's the actual problem with marketing when we start being real with ourselves. Is like 90% of the crap we put out there isn't even good enough to matter. And then we get to go, yay, I'm doing digital, and we measure our traffic, but it's completely disconnected from the growth of our business or in our market segment. And so I think the biggest part of all of digital is don't do things to do things that are actually good and do a lot less. Or whatever you're doing, do less of it. And the things you are doing, actually do them right. And I can't tell you how hard that is, but that would be my number one advice for digital right now is like actually do it right. Like try to do something that matters.
Yeah, before I move on to Neil for his opinion, I've never seen someone that straightforward and blunt in terms of B2B market as Garrett was just a moment ago. He was so clear, crystal clear in his opinions that I really respect actually because I've seen in my personal experience as well, people creating a lot of content without even measuring that what the content is going to be used for. They're having zero engagement, zero views, zero interactions, but they're creating the content like anything. Yeah, that is a tribe out there who is just generating electronic content, but no one to consume, and or at least no consumption with a sense behind it. So Neil, what do you want to add to that scenario?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of already great things being said. I think that when we look at the employees and the influencer piece, and yeah, if a CEO is not on social, it's going to be hard to convert them. But I think if we look at where we need to meet customers in a digital first scenario, search, email, social, the search and email we have some control over. Obviously, the social we really don't have control over, and that's where once executives that I speak to, figure that out, and they want to incite word of mouth. They realize that their employees can be a great source. And obviously, if you look at, in an employee as influencer program, who should be the most influential, it really starts at the top, doesn't it? So that's the way that I've been talking to companies about that. But I think that, now is a really opportune time to reset everything. I love what Michael said about, looking at your infrastructure. Do you have everything in place? Now is a really great time to invest behind the scenes. I also love what Garrett was saying. Does your content make sense in a pandemic world of today? For a lot of companies, it doesn't. They really need to relook at that message. But, I tend to see, and the advice that I give my clients now when we look at, organically, the algorithm just favor people, is not to look at social media as a way of a channel for marketing and promotion, because it was really built for people, right? It is social media, but look at it as this amazing platform to find others to collaborate with. And to collaborate with your customers, collaborate with your fans, collaborate with your employees. And I think if you take a very, very different mindset towards social media, I think that's going to help companies get out of that, promotion or content just for the sake of saying they're posting, every day on Instagram or whatever it is, and really have meaningful content because it's coming from people that have meaningful intent behind it. And I've always thought people are just better at creating content that's relatable, that touches other people than brands are in the day of social media. And we've seen people come out of nowhere to become quite influential because they've been able to do that. They're real, they're relatable. And this is something I think that brands should tap into.
Yeah, I mean, the truth here, right, around how it's working, I apologize, like, if you go look at media companies, right, you have like ESPN and you have Barstool. Whether you like or agree with anything they have, the Barstool method of social is what works, right? It's personality driven, and then it all funnels into a brand. In other words, they grow their audience through their talent, not through doing 2 more posts a day or through their brand, right? Like it's driven through their talent. And I think that's the same thing in organizations, right? Like it has to be driven through your talent. But if you don't have the executive team, like if you don't have from the top, I don't know if you can just like change the culture from the bottom when it comes to like social empowerment, right? Like unless I'm missing something. If the guy up top or the gal up top is on board with it, she's doing it, everybody's like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. This is what the leader does. And I think it gets buy-in for sure.
Well, Neil actually placed quite a huge emphasis on creating relevant content, and in fact, all of you guys did. So if I starting from Alan, so how to define relevant content? How to get the checklist right. This is something relevant for my audience, so everyone can do their fair share of creating content which is actually relevant, not just consumes time, and just not a blatant SEO exercise. Because let's face it, we have been creating long form content just for SEO rankings. There has been no motivation to educate the audiences. Because I have been in the industries which are just we had one of the previous companies I worked for, we had an 80 strong team for SEO. An 80 strong team just for SEO. We used to work day and night for SEO. So I have been in that culture, so I know how things can be least effective and just be a exercise of utility. So Alan, what do you think about that? How to create the relevant content? What is the checklist we should have?
Well, I don't. The checklist doesn't necessarily have to be long. I really, when from a marketing perspective, developing the content, it has to do with our product. It has to do with our customers. It's a case study. It's something that we want them to be interested in. But is it really interesting? And this is where really brands need to be doing two things. Think of their content stream in terms of maybe 90, 95, 98% of it is actually just informational and educational and fun. It's just engaging, fun to watch. I do a lot of work for nonprofits. I'm a member of the Sons of the American Revolution, and in building that audience and in engaging other members, just the educational aspect of that, and not trying to sell them or tell them to do something is very important. That's how you build the community. So I don't necessarily look at a checklist, but try and engage for myself. Is the stream I'm putting out, is it fun? Is it engaging? Is it something that's getting back conversation? Because if it's not, then I'm just blasting them. The other thing, and this is something that major brands, I did a study on the NFL. You would think the NFL, they have the most rabid fans. And yet if you were to look at their Twitter profiles, they follow back maybe 0.00001%. I mean, when major brands aren't following back their customer base, people who are actually engaging with them. Now, I know they fear that it might be a fake account or whatever that might be, but social rejection impacts the same part of the brain as physical pain. So when you reject me, it's actually causing physical pain. It impacts the same part of the brain. And so just the simple act of following back and so that your audience knows that they can engage with you, that's worth a ton of content right there.
So if I could build on what Alan said, I would add two things. Whatever checklist you've got, there's hundreds out there, right? I'm not going to get into the merits of a debate on the checklist. I would add two things, and Garrett touched on it. Is it actually good? I always use this stress test in my life it's my mom, right? My mom is my stress test for things. I knew Facebook was going to be popular the moment my mom got on Facebook. When she asked me about Snapchat, I put the phone down on her, right? So the things that you got to have a test. What's the test for what makes it good? Is it a customer panel? Is it a group of customers you trust? Is it a group of internal people that you trust that understand the perspective of your customers to get the answer to, is the content good? And then again, I would add what Garrett said, which is if it's just content for the sake of content without a distribution plan and how you activate that distribution plan in an effective way, then it's not even worth creating, because content without distribution is simply just noise.
Yeah, and I think the problem here too in all this, right, guys, is when we think of what our foundation is for marketing, most people's is so off of what it needs to be that all the stuff we're talking about is hard to fund. Like, you can't forget the part that, like, all this social stuff is really, really hard if you can't go to the CFO and say, here's how we're going to change social from a cost to a value. Like, I'm obsessed with finance and sales. Like, I'm good at SEO and PPC, but I'm obsessed with finance and sales. And the reason it's so important is it drives how you're perceived in an organization as a marketer. And so for everyone listening, what Michael was saying on that foundation, you need to take 10x further. So what I mean by that is like, you want to do the 4 Ps. You want to do price. Have you actually met with the CFO and said, here's how we can model out the utilization of our marketing budget if we decrease or increase our price, and how that would affect your Q3 or Q4 projections? Because if you're not having that deep of a conversation, no one takes you serious. Like if you want to go do product, but you haven't met with the product marketing team, fully understood their roadmap, honored them in that process, and said, here's how your marketing plan fits, you ain't getting it. Like if you haven't met with the CRO or the director of sales and said, here's how I'm going to bump up your close rate, or here's how I'm going to fix your pipeline, or here's how I'm going to increase the qualification from SDR to AE, you're not getting it. And so until you know all the pieces and can track it and have deep relationships, marketing will be devalued. You'll be churned in 2 years as a CMO, and it won't work. And that's why this happens. And that's why there's so much turnover in marketing at the highest level, is because they do it as marketers thinking their job is to do marketing. And your job is to do everything with deep, deep relationships in real financial models, real forecasting, and real depth. And if you don't do it at that level, you're just playing marketing. And that's the hardest part. And people don't even have the tech stack to do it. They don't have the direction to do it. They have so many pieces missing. I would say if you start with the foundation, now you can be creative. Now you can have fun. But you got to get like full bidirectional syncs, data from all your channels into a hub, fully synced and measured into a sales channel. And then you need to have a deep relationship with the finance department of how all of that fits into the vision of the org. And if you can get that part done and have channel level data, you are in the 1% of marketers in the world, and everything else you do doesn't even matter.
Oh, Garrett, actually, that was my
Man.
MBA in 1 minute, actually. I can actually summarize my entire 2-year business degree in those 2 minutes. Thank you so much for that. I guess we can have an entire session on the same approach, because making people understand the financial aspects of marketing is a real, what shall I say, pain in the ass. I'll just be non politically correct here. So yeah, guys. So once again, we are towards the end of the session right now. We are towards the end, and thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in. This has been something very interesting even for me. I've seen the conversation varying from getting back of personas, right, to community building, to messaging, finally once again to getting an entire holistic picture of a brand. Thank you so much for tuning into these scenarios, and you will receive a copy of the videos very, very soon, and of course the gift cards as well. And to all the audience, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will have a lot of webinars like this in the near future. So stay tuned with Designhill, and we'll get back to you. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good one.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks.